Summoner Necromancer is the #1 in Season 1. Yes, that was a tier 100 clear with level 85. The best part about Summoner Necromancer right now, it works with Ring of Mendeln, without, with the Barber, and without the Barber. Obviously, it gets supercharged by the Malignant Heart, and the Mendeln makes it vastly stronger, but until you have it, you can very well and strongly also play it without. Gameplay loop, skill breakdown, 1 to 50 aspects, itemization, stats on the items, Paragon Board, everything. Let's go. The gameplay loop changed because some new components in the build. That is Iron Maiden. Why Iron Maiden? Because 50% bonus multiplicative shadow damage. And also that we have the Decrepify aura nowadays. So technically you start every fight with Iron Maidening things. Then we follow up straight up with the Bone Prison into Blood Mist. The Blood Mist is there to automatically trigger the Corpse Tendrils and the Corpse Explosions with the explosive aspect and with the Sacrilegious Heart. So that while you're in the Blood Mist, you actually Corpse Tendril people already. And that looks like this. And we pull everything together. We can curse straight as we come out, and then everything dies. And our cooldowns are already reset again. So if everything wouldn't die straight away, we're good. The best part is the Blood Mist actually triggers crits as well, which gives us then the chance for the Barber Heart to overload and work on cascading explosive millions of damage. And we don't really get the millions of damages against these targets because they don't actually survive long enough. You know, they die relatively quick. But as you notice, with the inclusion of the Blood Mist now being on a higher cooldown, you can even do this in tier 100 dungeons, as you might see in the tier 100 dungeon playthrough if you want to watch that video. But it just makes the whole build visibly faster because you can just engage mobs different. And yes, I do this on high elite packs, low elite packs, everything. Very nice way. And as always, don't forget to curse in the beginning with Iron Maiden, because that is just bonus damage on everything you do. And well, you could also just engage with the Bone Prison into your standard Corpse Tendrils Corpse Explosion. You technically don't have to go in to apply the Decrepify. But since you really want to have the Decrepify for the cooldown reduction, you often do this. And the best part is really the auto trigger Corpse Tendrils from the Sacrilegious Heart, because you get out of Blood Mist and it's already going to be Corpse Tendril. Plus you can straight up follow with another Corpse Tendril cast. Now, how would that look without the Ring of Mendeln? Well, then you swap the Bone Prison over to the Blight. And it's actually simple there too. You can go in, Blight, Blight, Blight. Then you do the same. And whatever is left over, Blight, 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 pull together, Explosion, 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 Blight, 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 Curse to get the shadow damage. Very efficient and easy. Blight in this case is also just very nice damage in total that gets boosted by everything on top. We do have a basic skill with Reeb, but we don't actually use our basic skill at all. It straight up goes over to Blight, and then we're going for Supernatural Blight, because you and your minions deal 15% increased damage to enemies within Blight. And before you ask the question, how do you have Blight here, but you use Bone Prison? Why do you even have Blight? There is an aspect that helps here, more in the aspect part. Then we have the 3 points in Hued Flesh to make as many corpses as possible. We need Blood Mist to make corpses, so we can zoom in and have the Corpse Tendril auto spawn with a Sacrilegious Heart into Corpse Explosion as Blighted Corpse Explosion. Why is there only 1 point in Corpse Explosion? Because that's not our main damage. Our main damage is Ring of Mendeln, but it still does nice damage with everything we do in the long run. Boost the skeletons, have the Bone Prison continuously vulnerable enemies, and yes, I do have 6 points in Fueled by Death right now, which is another 18% multiplicative, quite nice. The only other passive I'd rather have is either Terror or Gloom. Gloom is actually my favorite one because it works so good, since that goes from 6 to 12 and then times 3. Because it's 6 times 3 up to 18. But if you actually get this up by 3 points, you're at 12, and then you're actually at 36 in total. 18% bonus. We have Iron Maiden for free to actually give us essence that we don't need, but we just do want to cast it for free. Technically, we could really forego that point on Enhanced Iron Maiden and put it into Necrotic Carapace. It's actually usable here in this because we really don't need essence in that build. So here you go for Necrotic Carapace. We're not playing Death Embrace because we're actually never super close. Yes, when we do our Blood Mist, but we mostly stay back to go Bone Prison with the Death Reach bonus damage, amplified damage, and then Decrepify plus the Abhorrent Decrepify, because yes, you need this. And interestingly enough, The Barber Heart that stacks up your critical strike damage has a bugged interaction with lucky hit stuff when it comes down to direct damage. If you need to deal direct damage for lucky hit to trigger, if it says do direct damage to a character, or if lucky hits triggers do direct, it doesn't work because you're doing damage into the Barber Heart, for example. There's a couple of interactions that are actually bugged and not working. For example, Decrepify is working because it says enemies hit while afflicted with Decrepify. This is enemies hit, so you're just hitting things. That's why Decrepify actually works, even if the Barber Heart is on. It really comes down to how the lucky hit exactly reads. The same goes for Hood Flash. Your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. That's it. Your damage, any damage. It doesn't matter where the damage is. The damage has a chance to, and that's where it actually should work. And I've seen corpses stack up like crazy around Barber target. Then we're going for corpse tendrils, and usually I would go for the blood orb corpse tendrils. So put the point away from here. The blood orb corpse tendrils. The blood orbs are bugged right now. That's like the only annoying thing. That's why I'm not doing it. But usually you would go for the blighted corpse tendrils. 3 in necrotic carapace. Then we also have the 3 in gloom, the 3 in terror. Only 1 point in crippling darkness. That's more than enough. 1 second stun, and that repetitive is super good. And also your darkness skills have up to a 15% chance to stun. Again, it doesn't say about anything like I don't have to deal damage to the target. I don't have to, direct damage to the target or whatsoever. No, crippling darkness just works against Barber targets. Then we have 3 points in Inspiring Leader and 3 points in Death Defense. Bonded Essence is not worth it. And also, the Hellbent Commander does not work with Ring of Mendeln. Ring of Mendeln scales with your damage. Which brings us last but not least to Shadow Blight. Bonus damage to stack up as well. And also the 10% multiplicative again for you, for Mendeln, and in general, your minions to do a little bit more damage. Which is also interesting in the Book of the Dead. I'm actually playing the Reapers here, obviously, for the bonus corpses. But we're, in this case, playing the Shadow Mages because I don't need the Essence from the Frost Mages. So the Shadow Mages we play for a bonus bold, and then they actually apply their Shadow Blight stacks as well. So we always have the bonus damage running. That being said, the Frost Mages still have the chance to be played just for the CC, because they actually help you to stagger Lilith, to freeze some things in between. You don't technically need the bonus damage. You'd rather take the bonus crowd control. And against my fight against Uber Lilith, I might go back to the Cult Mages. You could have them make targets vulnerable, but you already have enough vulnerable, so that's kind of like, what for? Coming to the aspects, quite something changed. First, we're playing the Damned aspect. You deal 50% increased shadow damage to enemies afflicted by Decrepify or Iron Maiden. Beautiful. More shadow damage? That's fantastic. Everything higher? Super. That gets the Sacrilegious Heart for automatic corpse explosions, so I constantly have my shadow stacks up. That gets followed up by the Ring of Mendeln. Up to 10% chance to empower all your minions so they do super damage. That damage here, these 13,000, they get multiplied with everything you do, not your minions do. Your critical strike chance, your critical strike damage, your multipliers, everything you do. Nothing your minions do. Very important. That gets the Decrepify Heart. And then we have the Choker of the Grasping Veins for bonus 24% increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils, and 48% bonus critical strike damage. I mainly take this for the maximum amount of critical strike chance on the amulet. That one could be changed to the Blighted aspect. That's 120% bonus damage for 6 seconds after Shadow Blight Key passive Denver's enemy. On the amulet, that would be 180%, so 60% more. I just wanted to go for maximum crit strike. If you have a high roll Corpse Tendrils, so if you have a 20% roll Corpse Tendrils, not 30 because 30 is only on amulet, so a high roll, that's 20%. I would put it on my weapon, and then I would put Grasping Veins on the amulet. As you can see on the amulet also, 3 ranks fueled by death, fantastic, damage reduction, and int. The int could actually be dex or willpower, and that would be better. On my ring here, for example, I have max life, critical strike chance, critical strike damage. Very good, works well. On my wand, it is intelligence, vulnerable damage, all stats, and critical strike damage. So only damage boost. What I could change here is probably, instead of the intelligence or the all stats, go for like damage versus close, damage versus distance, damage versus shadow dot damage affected enemies will probably be the best. On the off end, we have the Bone Prison exploding. Yes, we have the Bone Prison making blight, but also the Bone Prison exploding. Often gives us cooldown reduction, really nice, and maximum minion life. It has critical strike chance against injured enemies. That's a little bit sad. I would prefer critical strike chance. Boots are running Blood Mist Corpse Explosion, so I always have the Corpse Explosion up, and then I go for stat boosts mostly. On my pants, I want maximum life, minion life, armor, damage reduction, and then hardened bones for my minions to survive even more. The gloves are going for Bone Prison Blight spawn. And that's very important because that's how the pool of blight, actual blight, comes below your opponent with a 15% multiplicative damage increase. The gloves also can have critical strike chance and then critical strike chance against injured. So that's another 18% plus in total. That's nice. And lucky hit chance to actually trigger Mendeln without Bone Prison as well. That is 45 intelligence plus in total. Then on my chest, I have maximum life and I'm missing minion life on this one. It has damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time, which is the perfect damage reduction for shadow necromancers, but this needs minion life. And for the helmet, the other skeletal aspect for total armor, maximum life, all stats, intelligence, perfect. The intelligence could be willpower, or in this case, dexterity, because I need a lot of willpower and dex for all my nodes. And before I forget to mention it, the most important heart is obviously the Barber heart to stack up your critical strike damage, to have your critical strike damage overload so you can actually do millions and gazillions of crit. And the best part with this build is actually, right now we have a 50% plus critical strike chance as soon as Corpse Turtles is up, and it's always up because it's permanently cast. With over 400% critical strike damage, okay, that is insane. But most important, it turns all your minion damage into area of effect damage. Because Mendeln hits one target. So there's one target standing there, I can do 10 million damage to it. Nice. Because every single minion hits for 1 million, fantastic. But that's one minion dead. Now what happens is, if that one minion takes 10 million damage, it explodes and does damage to everyone around. And especially if you go in with Blood Mist, because Blood Mist can critical strike as well, you actually barber every single target of 20, and every single target starts stacking up damage, and then they start erupting, but in a staggered effect. So let's say the 207 seconds are up on the lowest minion, he explodes, and puts the damage on the other target that still has Barber, which also explodes. And that puts the damage on the next target that still has a millisecond of Barber, that then explodes with the overcharge as well. So it's kind of like a cascading effect of pop, 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 of the damage really spreading throughout all the minions. And suddenly you go from 10 million the first, 12, 14, 15, 16, 20, you know? And it goes higher. And that's how you explode complete packs in high nightmare dungeons. The Paragon board is quite big, but it's super simple. We're mostly going for max life and armor max damage nodes. We're using control straight up for the bonus damage versus crowd controlled enemies, and the 20% multiplicative, yes, goes really well to what you do. Bonus critical strike damage in the Send of Death board for bonus damage reduction for yourself, because there's always more than 2 corpses nearby, which allows us also to take 30% critical strike damage plus. And yes, here we will actually go also into the node with the glyph socket, and we're going to put exploit in, or imbiber. Imbiber is damage while healthy, which is an insane stack as well. And yes, the full Paragon board with all 100 points in the description below. Further over to the cult leader board, and yes, the cult leader board looks weird, right? But most important is to take here the Debt Razor glyph to get the damage reduction running. This minion damage here is not important at all. You could actually forego that, because the damage your minions do does not actually scale Mendeln. I still take it. Why? Because every single point of damage your minions do also get put in the end into the Barber heart. So if they're not triggering Mendeln, because while they trigger Mendeln, it's your damage. As they don't trigger Mendeln, it's their damage. So the more damage they deal in that case, the more Barber heart damage also stacks up as well. What we're focusing on in our pathing through this is to try to take as much willpower as we can. Because I only have 507, but I actually need almost 600 willpower. Down here in the Flesh Eater board, very important for the 40% multiplicative, it's again critical strike damage, critical strike, critical strike. And here, very important, the Essence glyph for another 60% critical strike damage plus, and critical strikes deal 22 increased damage to enemies that are not healthy. Whew, nice. And there is Dex, 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 and back here's another 2 Dex node we can clamp, plus 32% damage to elites. As you notice, also 450 Dex is needed to actually get this node. Yes, quite crazy. Now we're going to the Wither board. We don't actually want Wither itself. What we really want is 20% bonus shadow damage, and we're missing a little bit of willpower here. Plus, there's actually the Darkness glyph in for a lot of bonus shadow damage, which is a nice multiplier and a little bit of damage reduction. Long run, I want to get this one as well, because this is damage to affected by shadow damage over time enemies. Yes. And damage to elites. We need some dex to actually make this work. But again, it's a lot of damage. Followed up also by shadow damage over time. Not important, but another 10% shadow damage. And there is going to be 15% in total. So this is what you kind of want to take with the final points. And now we're going over this to not get the glyph socket. I would only get the glyph socket if I manage to have enough points left. Again, check up on the Paragon board below if I had enough points left. But what we're going over is the Bone Graft board over the maximum life node, and that needs 600 willpower. Yes, I know, but it's still 2% max life, 2%, 2%, another 4%. That's 10%, and it would be another 4%, 14% in total max life with one single node. You then go all the way up for maximum minion life, minion life, minion life, minion life, minion life, minion life, and that one is multiplicative. Interestingly enough, I'm currently only at 240% maximum minion life. Usually, I would be here at 420, 450% on my level 100 Necro. That being said, I don't have minion life currently on my ring and on my chest. That's another 100% actually missing. But I might also think, yes, the chest definitely gets another 50%, but the ring might actually stay open. Or the ring gets it and the chest might stay open, simply because they nerfed tier 100 dungeons. You might actually not need that much to keep them alive. Around 300% should be more than enough to keep your minions alive, especially with the 1.1.1 buffs coming, that the area damage from the fire effects and lightning pillars and everything is not so deadly for minions anymore. Summoner Necromancer is truly insane in this season, and especially if you find the Ring of Mendeln, take it with you into the Eternal Realm. But it perfectly works without these things as well to just smoothly transition you through the content. You're more looking for the Sever Summoner right now, and yes, we'll take all of my builds to also beat Uber Lilith and tier 100 dungeons to post videos here to show you they all work, or more into the Infinity Mist, which we're going to turn into the Bonanado, the Omnistorm, the Infinity Storm Necromancer today. Whew, it's going to be beautiful.